is up? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day. Back with some Astro Bot. And guys, I'm going to tell you this right now. If you own a PS5, go buy Astro Bot. Seriously, go buy it. You definitely will not regret it. You'll have loads of fun. And you'll be reminded of just how many old, sort of old and new IPs that Sony really has. Which is going to be the whole theme of this video here is Sony IPs. Because apparently Sony doesn't feel like they have enough original IPs, which is absolutely ludicrous considering how many you see in this game. So, without further ado, let's get right into this. Astrobot, without a shadow of a doubt, proves one thing. That Sony has no idea what they're doing. They have absolutely no clue what they're doing. And they chase after trends, they chase after big bucks, they chase after just wasting a lot of money on things that weren't going to work anyway. I mean, we're not even like a week removed from maybe the biggest disaster I've personally ever seen in a game ever in terms of Concord, which, if you remember, guys, I made a video on, I think it was like a State of Play or something, where Concord was shown off for like at least half of the show, and this game, Astrobot, was shown off for like a minute in a trailer, and I said, man, this game looks awesome. It might have been the best game of the show. Well, this game is the highest reviewed game of the year. I mean, even tops Final 7 Rebirth, and it's definitely going to be in the running for Game of the Year, and I wouldn't even be surprised if it did win, because it's loads of fun, and that's the key part, fun. It's made by people that actually want to make a fun video game, not just a bunch of BS, forced bullshit, and other things that you don't want to see in your games. But the key part I want to worry about here is, the whole thing with Sony. So Sony basically just lost a crap ton of money with Concord, and, in 8 years of development, about $100 million to make, gone down the drain. And yet this game here, took 3 years to make, didn't have nowhere near the team. I think it took like 60 people to make it, and I guarantee it's going to make a crap ton, lot more money than Concord. But what's funny is that Sony went out and said that, hey, we don't have enough IPs. And I'll tell you this right now. I have been a part of the PlayStation brand. I've owned every single PlayStation console from PS1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I think I have enough experience to tell you about the whole PlayStation brand. The statement of PlayStation brand doesn't have enough original IPs is absolutely ludicrous. Because the irony is that the more they talk, Sony, it makes me feel like they're more in common with Capcom than I thought. Because the thing about Capcom, I've always said, is like they have so many franchises that they refuse to do anything with. Dino Crisis, but as well as others. I've heard people, yell for Onimusha. I've personally also wanted to see Darkstalkers come back. But with Sony, it's ridiculous. And the thing is, they say this on the premise of this game literally just coming out. Because the whole purpose of this game is, you're the whole place is 5, and you lose all the Astrobots, and you have to go rescue them all. And a lot of them are all famous IPs. I haven't obviously found them all. I just started playing, but you'll see a few of them in this video. And I'm just thinking, you keep saying you don't have all these IPs. You have so many of them. A lot of them you haven't even touched in over a decade. Some maybe even 2 decades. But we don't have IPs. There are so many franchises people would love to see return, whether it's a remaster, a remake, or a brand new title. It speaks so tone deaf of Sony not understanding what it is they need to be doing. And I'll say this right now, the biggest advantage Sony used to have with the PlayStation, back in the good old days, the PS1 and PS2, and a little bit of the PS3 era, is they used to have this thing called variety. They weren't this whole one trick. I won't say they're necessarily a one-trick pony now, but they weren't like this 1 or 2 trick pony. The whole thing about the PlayStation, the early days, was the variety of how many different games you could play on there. Like they had every genre you could expect to play. Like you could play basically any type of game on the PlayStation 2, whether it was platformers, something that I think is greatly disrespected to this day. And here's an iconic one, Ratchet right there, saved him. Something I grew up with when it first came out back in 2002. But with Sony, they had, platformers, they had puzzle games, they had racing games, they had RPGs, JRPGs, shooters, you know, you name it. They had just about like every type of genre you could think of, you know, horror game, subgenre, and stuff like that. But they had a whole variety. And the coolest part about it is back then, you didn't have to have games that sold a ridiculous amount or it cost a ridiculous amount to make in the first place. Something you see all the time nowadays, and I think they just made the comment someone did was saying like, hey, we need games that cost more money, and I'm thinking, no, you don't need games that cost more money. You need games that cost less money. It's like in so many of these games nowadays, they have these insane budgets. Not just games, but movies too. You have all these insane budgets, and I'm just thinking, why? Like, why would you? I mean, you're gonna lose. It's almost if you can just tell it. You guarantee you're already gonna lose money. It's almost guaranteed. They think all these franchises are going to make this insane big bucks, you know, money, like they're, you know, God of War or their Last of Us type sales. And it's like, no, games, 95% games are not going to be doing stuff like that. They're not going to make it a GTA money or, you know, Legend of Zelda type money or stuff like that. No, you got to understand that what made games so great back then was games didn't have to sell a ridiculous amount to be successful, because they didn't cost a ridiculous amount for inflated budgets, and they could be still just as fun, if not more fun, and they could sell 1 million or 2 and be successful. But nowadays, it's like every game has to sell 10 million, just like every movie has to sell 1 billion, or it's a failure. And I'm thinking, no, this is just stupid. So you take insane amounts of money to cost. You obviously not going to make back what you do unless you sell, like, I don't know, insane amount of copies. And then you sit there and wonder, well, why? Well, number one, a lot of these games that you keep costing, they're not like anything new and original. They're just the same retreaded things you've already seen again. Like, you know, Concord, there was nothing, you know, unique about that. I mean, it's just a half-ass Overwatch, and that's being nice saying that. And then, ironic enough, you got another game, Marvel Rivals. And by the way, here's another game that people have been crying about to come back, Sony. Yeah, you know, oh, we don't have enough IPs. I mean, how many people have been asking for Bloodborne to come back? But no, you know, we don't have enough original IPs. But anyway, you know, you have all these games that they're not original, they're not unique, they're just basically chasing these trends. They cost so much money to make, and then they just fail. And then you have a game like this, a simple concept game that looks beautiful, by the way, and it absolutely works. And ironically enough, it could possibly win Game of the Year this year, and I wouldn't even be surprised by it, honestly. I'm having a blast with it. And it's a platformer, because that's a genre that Sony has completely abandoned. Like, you rarely see them do platformers. When I first played games, guys, before I got into survival horror and before I got into JRPGs, platforming was my games. You know, I played the Ratchet and Clanks, I played the Spyro the Dragons, the Crash Bandicoots. And speaking of Crash, you gotta have Crash. One of my first three-dimensional games alongside Tomb Raider. But, you know, platformer, that was the thing. You know, the Marios, the Crashes, the Spyros. You know, I had all these platformer games. But that's the thing, that variety was so special. It's what made the PlayStation so iconic and great. But when you just make everything the same now they just want everything to look photorealistic. They want every game to be an insane budget thing. And they expect the sales to be like that, but it doesn't work out that way. You need to understand games shouldn't cost as much as you try to make them be. They shouldn't be inflated in their budget. And they should just be simple games. Like, and by the way, when I was doing this definitely screamed Crash Bandicoot, definitely to me, this part here. But you're going to get a little surprised at the end, because it's going to be another IP that's been completely ignored by Sony for God knows how long since the last one was released. But, you know, Sony used to have so many fun games. And not to say they don't make fun games, but just not as many. And here's what I'm talking about. Here's a iconic one, Jak and Daxter. I remember playing that game. And by the way, you remember when you played the first one and it was, you know, kind and lighthearted, and the second one turned into like a GTA type game, and you had that alert system where those guys will literally hound you down and chase after you if you like did one thing wrong in the Metropolis or the city. Man, they were more intense than like 6-star GTA police after you or something. Like, that was how ridiculous Jak 2 was. But yeah, Jak and Daxter is another franchise that hasn't been touched in who knows how long, but just completely forgotten. I know a lot of people have been asking for, you Killzone or Resistance Fall of Man to come back. Just like so many franchises. It's ludicrous. You don't have any, like, and yet you just want to do the same ones over and over again. You want to do the same type of game over and over. And once again, I have fun with those games, but like, we need the variety. And it's just funny because you just released this game, Astrobot, which is extremely successful, and it has Lord knows how many. I don't even know all the ones. I know I'm gonna eventually have the Resident Evil and Silent Hill Astrobots we're gonna find, and I'll let you know here. And here's another ancient one. And now, I'll be honest, I never owned this game, but this was a game I had on a demo disc when I had the old PlayStation magazine, and I was just like, damn, they put him in there. Like, I remember because I could never beat it. It always pissed me off as a kid, but. How many of you remember this guy right here? Parappa the Rapper. Yeah, a lot of you are probably looking like, who the hell is that? I just remember that demo, man. It pissed me off as a kid. I could never get past the demo level and stuff. That just wasn't my cup of tea. But yeah, they brought that back. But oh my goodness, there's so many IPs. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's just... It's ludicrous to say this, and it just screams that Sony does not know what they're doing. And it comes from a bunch of people who just seemingly aren't really real gamers. This screams of a bunch of CEOs and execs that don't understand the thing that they're apparently in charge of at all. They just want the money no matter what, and they just think, hey, this franchise made a bunch of, money stuff. Every franchise can do that, right? No, they can't. And they don't understand that having that variety was the biggest and most powerful asset that Sony used to have. And you see it nowadays more than ever before. As I said, even though I am enjoying my time on a PS5, it's absolutely insane to think that, hey, you compare their lineup to what it was back in the PS1, PS2 days. It's not even a fair fight. I mean, it's basically like saying, hey, you're going to compare the 96 Chicago Bulls with the Washington Generals at this point. Like, it's not a fair fight. I mean, it should be called off, and I'm hoping that this game reignites a lot of like people's love for a lot of these old famous IPs that have been dormant for so long. Some of them over a decade, some of them even over 2 decades. I mean, it's insane, and hopefully they'll understand that not every single game needs to be $100 million plus budget thing. I mean, you see this all the time in movies where you'll have these movies with insane budgets. Like, I've never seen this movie, but I was like reading this online. Knives Out cost $40 million to make. Knives Out 3 is $220 million, and I'm just like, why would a movie like that need to cost that much to make? Not to mention all the other costs it's going to have. But it's just like, this is ridiculous. It's like you're asking to lose money. And then you have like these other movies that will cost nothing, and then they'll be so much, they're better overall in terms of movies, and they don't cost nowhere near the amount to make, and yet they make so much more money. It's insane. It's like, why does it seem like a lot of the games and movies that take insane budgets, they end up not very good. They don't even look like the money they cost to make. And yet these lower cost games and movies end up so much better than these high cost ones, and they're better, and they make a lot more money too. It's ridiculous. Like, listen, I get it for like a GTA or a God of War or something like that, high cost. I understand it for games like that. But you have to understand that 95% of franchises aren't like that. They don't need insane budgets. And there also needs to be that variety too. Sony, wake the hell up. Man, you're drunk as hell. And here's another one, Ape Escape. Now, I never played Ape Escape, but I do have experience with Ape Escape, because if you remember the special edition of Metal Gear Solid 3, I think it was Subsistence, they had the Ape Escape team up with Snake, and basically had Snake versus Ape, where you had to catch all the apes, but just more fond memories. But Sony, wake the hell up. Bring back your IPs. Stop. You don't need, I mean, you can make new IPs, but you have so many old ones that you haven't used in decades. Bring them back. It's not rocket science, but that is my opinion. I want to hear your guys' opinion. Do you think it's ludicrous that Sony thinks they don't have enough IPs when there's so many that have been sleeping like forever? Let me know down in the comment section down below, but thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, and hopefully I can see you guys back in the next one. Thanks, and I'll see you all later. Peace.